Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. So in this video, I wanted to show you something super cool that I've been working on. If you've seen my previous video about interviewing with an AI, well, I've got news for you. I've turned it into a web page that people can access. Now, this is an alpha version and it cost me money to run this. So for now, it's not going to be open to everyone, but I wanted to run through one interview on this page with you so you can actually see what it looks like. And it's actually pretty fun to do. So here's the web page right here. Very simple web page. You can just select the job title. There's a lot of jobs. A lot of them are completely ridiculous. Um, Cloud Human Resource Manager. That is one interesting job title. This is all generated with AI, with OpenAI, and yeah, it's they're interesting, but it all works. It's pretty cool. This is all coming from a backend. There's like a list of like a ton of jobs. We're going to do cloud architect. Let's do cloud architect today. So basically, you select your um, job that you want to interview for. You can also change a few things like automatically play the audio or use which microphone you want to use, the size of the font. This is just for recording purposes, so this way I can show you and you can actually see in the video. But yeah, so we're going to do this interview. I'm going to run through this. I don't really have experience as a cloud architect, but I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to pretend you guys are the people I'm interviewing with, and the AI will show you the questions. Um, the recording from the AI can be downloaded, so I downloaded them and edited them inside the video so it sounds much clearer than my microphone recording my speakers. Let's do this. Let's do a job interview. So here's how the interview is going to go. There's going to be 5 questions. 5 questions that are generated from the beginning, random questions about the job title. Then each of these questions is going to generate another question, a follow-up question by the AI, and that is going to be asked at the end. So at the end of the 5 questions, you're going to have the follow-up question for question 1, then the follow-up question for question 2, and so on and so forth. It's also going to show you show me feedback that I can play. It gives me, here's how you did with the answer, and here's, how you can improve. It also gives me a score out of 10. Again, this is all AI, so I'm going to show you some limitations of it by answering the very first question completely wrong. I'm going to do it on purpose. I'm going to talk about, let's say, marketing or 3D printing. I'm going to talk about 3D printing on the first answer, and you will see how off it could be because this is all AI, and I asked it to give me something I did good and something I did bad, and so let's give that a shot.
What experience do you have designing cloud-based architectures?
So I really like 3D printing. 3D printing is very fun. I've had a 3D printer for almost a year now, and I've had a lot of fun with it. I've also done 3D printing professionally in a different job. That was very fun. And yeah, I just really like 3D printing.
What challenges have you faced while migrating applications to the cloud?
So we're going to look at the feedback right here. You did a great job sharing your enthusiasm for 3D printing and your experience in the field. To answer the question in full, it may help to explain the types of cloud-based architectures you have designed in the past and any challenges you faced and the successful outcomes you achieved. This will provide the interviewer with a better understanding of your experience with cloud-based architectures. Your score is a 1 out of 10. So it does understand that I was completely off topic. It was very generous with the score, but yes. So now we're going to do the rest of the interview very seriously. Let's play this down again.
What challenges have you faced while migrating applications to the cloud?
Okay, so one big challenge that we have when migrating applications to the cloud is that the infrastructure has to be adapted to the cloud. So if you're moving a workload from on-premise to cloud, the idea is not to reproduce the on-premise architecture to the cloud and do a one-to-one translation. You have to use cloud native technologies, otherwise it makes no sense to move to the cloud. So the biggest challenge that we have when we move um, workloads and architectures, applications to the cloud is that we have to adapt to the cloud technology. That means that taking software that runs in an OS on a virtual machine, we have to take that and adapt it to platform as a service type of thing, like serverless, Azure Functions, or Kubernetes, or containers. And all this requires some reworking of the application. The other thing we have is that when you have an application that is running on a virtual machine, everything runs 24/7. But when you move to cloud computing, you can't just run things 24/7 because that's going to cost a lot of money. And so you have the added challenge that you have to scale up and down based on the workload. You have to scale up and down based on the demand or the time of day or what have you, and make sure that you optimize what you're running, which is not something that you have to do on premise because you have your infrastructure, you have everything running 24/7. You're paying for it even if you don't use it. So it doesn't really matter. Whereas in the cloud, um, you want to not pay for what you don't use. So that's one big challenge. That's a lot of text.
What cloud services have you worked with?
And I will do the feedback later. We'll do it at the end. So I have worked with a lot of cloud services. I've worked with storage. I've worked with functions and serverless. I've done some container work. I've done Synapse data migration using Synapse, just pipelines, data pipelines. I've worked with automation accounts. I've worked with what else? Cosmos DB. I've worked a lot with Cosmos DB, the SQL and the MongoDB APIs. I've worked with speech services. Right now, this is what this is running. Um, and yeah, computer vision, all that stuff. I've really explored the cloud from either work related projects where I had to build a data warehouse with Synapse, with Azure Functions, with automation accounts, with storage, data lake, and all that stuff, and personal projects where I've dealt with speech services and cognitive services and things like that. So I've really explored the cloud. I've also worked with AWS a little bit with EC2, Elastic Beanstalk, and yeah, I think that's really Lambda functions a little bit. I've also dealt with MongoDB in the cloud MongoDB Atlas. So I've explored a little bit of the cloud. I've also explored Google Cloud, not as much as the other ones, but I've explored it.
How have you incorporated security into cloud architectures?
So our security is always the number one thing when you work with cloud computing. You don't want, not only do you not want to pay for stuff, but you also don't want to pay for other people to use your stuff. So it's really the number one thing that we always strive to do first when we do cloud computing. We really look at security. We really look at what settings we're going to use. We also try to foresee how this is going to be used in the future. For example, if we have an application that runs on premise or in a private virtual network, how do we then allow applications to run from the public internet, be served on the public internet? What does this look like? We also do some pen testing for different applications we put through, we put in the cloud or new services, to make sure that, everything is done correctly The other thing we do is we have policies in place and we do audit based on these policies to make sure that everything is compliant with our policies. So, for example, no anonymous access on Azure Functions, no anonymous blob storage that everybody can read, keys that are not primary keys that are not used everywhere, and things like that. So we have a lot of mechanisms in place to do security in the cloud. We also have a security team who helps us make decisions following best practices. So we have a lot of things at work in our arsenal to do that. So, yeah.
What strategies do you use to optimize cloud costs?
So actually, for this one, we do a dry run. We do a dry run with the services without any optimization. So we get an idea of how everything is being used and we take the big hit up front. Then we try to figure out what are the areas where a service or collections of services can be improved. Let's say that if we see we're not going to focus on services that don't cost too much to, we're not going to optimize services that cost a lot of very little money, sorry. We want to focus on the ones that are really taking up a lot of our money. So to do that, we do the dry run, we see what costs the most, and then that's our priority list. We want to optimize based on the one that costs the most to the one that costs the least, because, more bang for your buck. So the different strategies we have, it really depends on the service. We can do things like turn things on and off on a schedule. We can turn them based on consumption. Like when a virtual machine goes below 80% CPU, we scale down the scale set. Above, we scale up. We also have, we can also not use cloud services. That's also a solution to just say, you know what, this is costing too much in the cloud. We have an on-premise data center. Let's just keep everything local for this thing until it becomes cheaper or it makes more sense to move it to the cloud. So we have various strategies. Obviously, one of the important thing is to keep an eye on cost on a regular basis and make sure that there's no new use cases that start costing a lot of money. You like cloud? Sorry,
How does your
you like
experience
cloud?
with 3D
I was talking
printing
to my
relate to
dog.
designing cloud-based architectures?
See, that's the 3D printing. It's coming back. The feedback about the 3D printing is coming back. Um, let's see if we can put it into perspective. Let's put it all together. Um, so 3D printing and cloud architecture actually have a lot of in common because it's about designing something that works. There's a lot of pieces to working in 3D printing that really apply very well in cloud computing. For example, cost. I have to use material. I have to use PLA. I have to use, filament. This printing this costs money. This is 81 grams, right? So how do I design this? How do I design this cup so that it uses the least amount of filament? Also, how do I design it so that it's the highest quality I can have with the least amount of costs and least amount and time also is a cost. So this translates a lot to cloud computing because you have to do these optimizations. You have to think about how do you take a service, put it into production in the cloud, and how do you optimize all these parameters. And a lot of this, like 3D printing, is optimizations you have to do up front. I can't start optimizing things once I've deployed this, right? This is done. This is forever exists. So I can't do these optimizations after. So when you do cloud computing, when you do a cloud architecture, you have to design things ahead of time. You have to take into consideration a lot of these things ahead of time and to generate an architecture that works the best with the knowledge and the money and the tools and the skills that you have at the time to last you for a long time, because you don't want to redesign things afterwards. You want to be as close to perfect as you can without being there. So they're really related to each other. So yeah.
What strategies have you used to ensure that applications are optimized for cloud-based architectures?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'm actually curious if, okay. All right. What strategies have you used to ensure applications are optimized for cloud-based architecture? Well, the first thing is making sure that it runs in a cloud native environment. That's the very first thing that we have to do. We can't just take an executable, install it on a virtual machine, and say we're optimized for cloud based environment. The other thing is we have to make sure that things don't run 24/7. We have to make sure that uh, it is an environment that can be changed dynamically. So everything needs to be able to change dynamically, meaning that if we have certain settings, they have to be available uh, at a moment's notice without being either hard coded or, well, they can be hard coded, but without requiring like a persistent memory. So that means we have to store things into databases, we have to store things into settings, and so on and so forth. And we can't count for the service to be on 24/7. We have to account for the service to be down. Not the whole service, but if you think of Kubernetes, pods get created and get destroyed, and they have to have a way to access data when a new pod is created. Same for functions, Azure functions that are serverless environment. The idea is to move more and more towards a serverless environment where nothing is persistent and it grows and shrinks as the demand um, adjusts to the demand. So that's very important. And sometimes it requires reworking code or requires getting new vendors altogether for services that don't require to be on 24/7. So yeah,
What steps do you take to ensure your cloud architecture is secure?
I can answer that. All right. Step one to ensuring cloud architecture is secure is design everything ahead of time. We do diagrams, we do reviews, we have multiple people looking at it, and we check that, on an architectural big point of, huge bird's eye view, that it makes sense. Think about, I decide to build a house with no walls. That this type of thing, catch these things where walls can hold the roof. Um, so we try to make sure that some of the most basic components are there, such as having network in place, having connections, having DNS, making sure that there's no public IP addresses in the design and all that stuff. Second step is we design everything in Terraform. That allows us to have a written down version of our infrastructure, and it allows us also to manage said infrastructure easily. So because everything is modular, we've done modules in Terraform, we can say, okay, this is a new gold standard for our architecture in terms of security, and we can change it in the root module, and that will trickle down to everything else that's using it. So it allows us to manage the whole environment at once through code. And the second thing is we have an infosec team that looks, the third thing, sorry, looks at, monitors in general, like, antivirus and things like that. So we have that too, that, we have a team monitoring all these indicators on a regular basis and catch anything that's out of the ordinary. And Yeah, and then we also have, just use things and then figure out, oh, there's a problem and fix it. So we have a few options.
What other strategies do you use to monitor and reduce cloud costs?
Yeah, this is very blocky. All right. What other strategy? The problem is I don't know what I said before. Um, so one thing we have in place is dashboards. I have a dashboard that every time I log into Azure, I see all these costs, and that allows me to very easily every day monitor how things cost. And having that graph and seeing this line is as I expected allows us to have some basic peace of mind that nothing crazy is happening, and it allows us also to catch anything crazy that would be happening, and remedy these craziness. um, Another thing we have is we have reports that run on a regular basis and predict our costs and say, hey, look, we're about to hit our budget. So these are called budget alerts in Azure. We set budget for each subscription and we say, if we reach 50%, give us an alert. If we reach 100%, give us an alert. And if we go above that, give us an alert too. So we get alerting on a regular basis. The idea is with the 50% that we reach that around halfway through the month. If we reach it before, we have a little bit of problem. If we reach it after, then everything is on track to be good, and we don't worry. So really, just human feedback is important on a regular basis. Um, there's no real way in Azure to limit the costs. They do have a way in Enterprise. Some actually they don't have any way. So we can't just say, hey, if you hit this amount, stop everything. So we have to monitor on an ongoing basis.
What strategies do you use to ensure cost efficiencies in your cloud architectures?
Did I do all the questions already? So 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, this should be the last question. What strategies do you use to ensure cost efficiencies in your cloud architecture? Well, the first thing we do is we try to use platform as a service, as opposed to infrastructure as a service. So we try to maximize that. That allows us to have more flexibility in terms of things running on and off and being less having less overhead and all that stuff. Um, we also plan for certain automations to be in place when we design things. So, for example, if we know that something will be on 24/7, we need a virtual machine. For some reason, we absolutely need a virtual machine. We make sure that it's in something like a scale set. So if we need more compute, we can add more compute without getting a baseline of super expensive machine, right? So if we can use two machines instead of one big machine that's running 24/7. That's a consideration we have to make. Another thing is we try to add in our architecture automation tools. So GitHub Actions is one of our automation tools that we can easily run um, on our schedule or based on different things. We also have the automation accounts where we can have different calls, different infrastructure maintenance done automatically. For example, I have a machine that gets turned on and off on a schedule because I need a virtual machine. I don't have a choice but I also don't want it to run 24/7. So I have these little tools all around to make sure that everything is cost efficient. So yeah.
What specific tools or services have you used to optimize applications for cloud-based architectures?
Okay, at this point, there's a bug. It should not be asking me more questions. So we're going to stop right here. This is the last question we're going to take. 10 questions, plenty. The screen says 27 minutes going, so you can look here. It's a lot. So let's go through the feedback. And I'm actually going to save all this audio so you can hear it properly um, in the video.
You did a great job sharing your enthusiasm for 3D printing and your experience in the field. To answer the question in full, it may help to explain the types of cloud-based architectures you have designed in the past, any challenges you faced, and the successful outcomes you achieved. This will provide the interviewer with a better understanding of your experience with cloud-based architectures.
Yeah, score 1 out of 10. No surprise.
You did an excellent job of responding to the question. You provided a comprehensive overview of the challenges associated with migrating applications to the cloud, and you gave a clear explanation of the differences between on-premise and cloud computing. You could further improve your response by including examples of how you have previously addressed the challenges that you outlined. Additionally, providing information on how you have optimized cloud computing costs would be beneficial.
Okay, 9 out of 10. Not bad. Okay, I guess I didn't get any feedback on this one. I wouldn't be surprised if this answer was too long. And so it was like, eh. So that's a bug. Look, there's bugs, sorry.
You did a great job of describing the security protocols you and your team follow when incorporating cloud architectures. You highlighted a range of measures to ensure security and compliance, such as setting up policies, auditing, testing, and having a dedicated security team. You can improve your response by providing more detail on the specific security protocols you use and how you have adapted them for cloud architectures.
9 out of 10, not too bad. Very proud of myself uh, on these things. That's interesting. There was a bug. This one is much longer than the previous one, and it gave me feedback. So I need to look into why that is. Maybe because I have a lower score.
You did a great job of explaining the strategies you use to optimize cloud costs. You provided multiple examples of how you can turn services on and off, or scale them up or down. You also discussed not using cloud services and keeping an eye on costs on a regular basis. To further improve your response, you could provide a few examples of how you have implemented those strategies in the past.
7 out of 10. Yeah, it's okay.
The interviewee did a great job in connecting 3D printing and cloud architecture by explaining how the same concepts of optimization and cost efficiency apply to both. They also did well in relating the concept of optimization to cloud architecture, indicating that it is important to design the architecture ahead of time and to be as close to perfect as possible without actually being perfect. The interviewee could improve by providing more specific examples of how 3D printing and cloud architecture are related.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, probably not something that would come up in an interview. I would be very curious how a human would react to the way I answered the first question and the way I answered the second question. That would be one interesting thing. Um,
You did a great job of describing your strategies for optimizing applications for cloud-based architectures. You clearly have a deep understanding of the technical aspects of cloud-based architectures, and you were able to explain it in a way that is easy to understand. Your explanation of the need for dynamic environments, as well as the importance of serverless architecture, was thorough and informative. In order to improve, you could provide more practical examples of how you have implemented these strategies in the past. This would give the interviewer a better understanding of your experience and abilities.
My score was a 7 out of 10. Not too bad.
You did a great job responding to the interviewer's question. You outlined the different steps you take to ensure cloud architecture is secure, including designing everything ahead of time, using Terraform to manage infrastructure, monitoring indicators, and using a fix-it mentality. You also provided details about each step. To further improve your response, you could provide specific examples of how each step is implemented. This will help your interviewer gain a deeper understanding of the steps you take to ensure cloud security.
7 out of 10.
You did a great job describing the strategies you have in place to monitor and reduce cloud costs. You provided a lot of detail about the dashboards and budget alerts you use, and how they help you keep costs in check. You also gave a good explanation of how to use the alerts to gauge if you're on track with your budget. One area you can focus on improving is to provide more context around how you are able to limit costs on the cloud platform. This will help give the interviewer a better picture of your knowledge and experience in this field.
I may download things multiple times because I don't remember whether or not I downloaded them, so don't mind me.
You did a great job in your response to the question. You clearly outlined a range of strategies you use to ensure cost efficiency in your cloud architectures. You demonstrated your knowledge of the use of platform as a service, automations, and architecture automation tools, as well as the importance of planning and making informed decisions like using two machines instead of one big machine. You could further improve your response by providing specific examples of how you have implemented these strategies in your work.
Good job, 9 out of 10. All right, let's see if that bug caused that extra question to be asked. I'm going to answer that extra question, and I'm going to play it again.
What specific tools or services have you used to optimize applications for cloud-based architectures?
And I actually don't know the answer to that. I actually don't know the answer to that. So one thing that I use a lot is monitoring. I try to monitor things a lot to make sure that usage stays within a reasonable amount. And I also do some benchmark. If I'm migrating an application, I do some benchmark on the original application to get an idea of how this application actually runs locally on a non-cloud architecture before I move it to the cloud and see how much would it cost me. I also do a lot of development, and when I do development, I do cloud first development. I do things that are made for the cloud, that are done, natively in the cloud, such as Azure Functions, Lambda Functions, EC2, all that type of things that are made to run in the cloud. Um, yeah, and I use serverless a lot, as much as I can. Yeah, I had no idea how to answer this question.
What type of monitoring
Okay.
tools do you use to ensure the cloud architecture is secure?
So yeah, it's going down a rabbit hole. I need to make it stop, but I think the video is super long, so we'll do the feedback of this one. And yeah.
The interviewee did an excellent job in their response, detailing the tools and services they use to optimize applications for cloud-based architectures. They mentioned monitoring, benchmarking, and cloud-first development. They also enumerated specific services like Azure Functions, Lambda Functions, and serverless. To further improve their response, they can provide a more detailed explanation of the specific tasks they perform for each of the tools or services they mentioned.
Yeah, honestly, this would not be an 8 out of 10 for me. I would give it maybe a 4 or 5 out of 10. This is not, but it's an AI. Look, it does what it can with what it knows. It's never interviewed for a job in its life. Maybe interviewed for the Turing test at some point, but that's about it. So, what's next? Well, if you want to get access to the alpha version, if you want to give it a shot, I can't open it to everyone because this costs me money. And if everybody who subscribe to this channel does 10 minutes a month of it, my bill is going to be uh, over $300 a month for 10 minutes per person. So if you want to get access to it, if you want to give it a shot and you won't share it, you can contact me either on LinkedIn or on Twitter. My handles are right here. And first message you send me is gonna say alpha. First message. Don't say hello. Don't say anything. Just say alpha, and then you can say hello and everything else. Um, but it allows me to know that you're not trying to sell me something. Um, so yeah, to do that, I'll give you the link to the online version. This is running locally on my machine, but there's the same thing running online because I don't want you to accidentally catch the URL of the online version. I'll have like a couple people, not a lot of people. So if you're not accepted in the alpha version, don't worry. I'll try to work more into it and do a beta version in the future, and I'll definitely you'll be on the top of the list. But yeah, so um, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoy the idea of the tool. Uh, I have fun doing these interviews. It's very cool. Unlimited content ideas, so pretty neat. So yeah. So if you want to watch the previous interview, it's right here. If you want to click here to subscribe, it's awesome. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.